This is Rodney Godfather Don Chapman speaking to you live from the planet Brooklyn. We are here at Fly Fidelity, coming in hot, coming in live, about to drop it like we always do.
First I say, what we're going to do. Then you say, I don't know, what do you want to do? Well, we're going to do what you want to do.
I have an idea.
You're going to dig this.
The Fly Fidelity Podcast
Is the solution. It's the best.
Check it out.
You want to get super fly.
Details just ahead.
Do you love
credible content,
but hate?
How long you have to wait?
And who wants
super thick and frothy dumpster juice with rat corpses in it?
There's a better way.
Fly Fidelity.
Fly Fidelity.
Fly Fidelity. Fly Fidelity.
Fly Fidelity.
Fidelity. Fly Fidelity Podcast.
Fly Fidelity, baby. Fidelity, baby. Fidelity.
With your host, Luke Bailey.
What's going on, and welcome to another episode of Fly Fidelity with your host, Luke Bailey. This week, the man of no words breaks his silence. Legendary MC and beatmaker, Godfather Don is special guest. In this rare interview, Don speaks to his humble beginnings and early inspirations on his journey to becoming one of rap's most elusive. We talk about the making behind some of your favorite Godfather Don releases, some of his many other talents, as well as the future and new releases. Enjoy the conversation.
Warfare's inevitable, hot steel's incredible. Properties of the skill, get the feel. Warfare's inevitable, hot steel's incredible. Properties of the steel, get the feel. Warfare's inevitable, hot steel's incredible. Properties of the steel, get the feel. Warfare's inevitable, hot steel's incredible. A double-edged blade, we kill to get paid. I had a job to rob scripts from the abyss. For this, I enlist scientist analysis of my balance shit. The new Krieger, see the mulatto trigger, equipped to dissolve your figure quicker than liquor inside the liver. The deliverer, a deadly syphilis, lyricist lounger, abound to pound sounds of nihilistic rounds and down to explode enemy offices and their offices, distort your shit off the hip and cause the quick whip to the coroner. Of course, with the
Start with the, oh boy.
It's
a deep dive. Go for it. You crack it open.
I'm curious about your first musical epiphany. Is there one that you recall either sound-based or purely musical that pushed you to explore sound?
Most definitely, man. I mean, let's see. My father was a guitar player, and my older brother was a musician as well, and I used to always beat on the drums when they had their rehearsals in the living room and stuff like that. So I was always around music, always around sound. And let's see, more specifically to your question, I guess, once I started studying musical instruments, or, I started with the guitar, and drums really, but once I got into the guitar and then, checked out the harmony and everything, and, the idea of harmony and chord structure and everything. Now, I didn't know this stuff, like, with technical terms, you know what I mean? Like a dominant, all of that stuff, technical terms. I just knew that certain things was happening at certain times that was giving what you call the music certain colors, certain attitudes, you can say, like harder music or edgier or emotional, what they call now like ballads and,
right.
Whatever. So I started to make those distinctions early based on just the fact that certain things as far as tones and rhythms was happening at certain times. And then once I started fooling around with the guitar and stuff, I said, now this is right before I got into hip-hop. You know what I mean? So I guess the musical thing for me was already realized before I got into hip-hop.
So, got you. So you're cutting your teeth playing the electric guitar at a time when
Right.
hip-hop is still essentially, I guess, being defined. I'm assuming this is early to mid-'80s?
Right. This is like early 80s, mid 80s. This is like once I got enamored with the guitar, man, I tried to put little bands together in my building, in my neighborhood, any chance to just make noise on the guitar. It was a great, great old friend of mine, still a buddy of mine. We call him Moses. He was like one of those neighborhood characters, like a prophet sort of guy. You see him in a mysterious puff of smoke when you're feeling down or you feeling perplexed about something. Poof! Then Moses is walking around the corner and he has the answer to your, the most perplexing questions of a creative nature. So it was that guy, I have to mention him, that introduced me to playing musical instruments. As a matter of fact, my first guitar, I actually built it with his help, So, and that's right before hip-hop. He got to see me do hip-hop and everything and influenced me a lot, as a matter of fact. I'm skipping a little bit, but he gave me a couple of records that I used that people know that I'm sure you'll get into, and that'll bring me back to Moses and how important it was, he was in just my development. I even gave him a shout on the back of Hazardous, believe it or not, Moses Godfrey Arthur. But anyhow, yeah, so that musical thing I realized, within myself right before hip-hop. And that, you're right, the early, mid-'80s, guitar, wanted to be a guitar hero, Yngwie Malmsteen, Eddie Van Halen, all of that kind of stuff, Richie Blackmore from Rainbow, all of that stuff, playing that stuff, going to jams and everything. And, that's, the music was already in me and bubbling to get out at that point.
So for the sake of framing the time and place back then, can you talk about your earliest experiences through the social lens of hip-hop growing up in Brownsville?
Right. Well, I mean, the earliest memories of hip-hop was about rap, right? I mean, not the word the way they use it now, like a genre, more like an activity, right? Rap. Like guys, whether they're adversaries, all of this is in a friendly context, a creative context, whether they're adversaries, like battling graffiti or whatever, clothes, styles, news, or whatever the case was. It was an activity that involved one guy bragging about, whatever the subject was, how nice his clothes were or how cool his car was. It was like a community, a ritualistic thing, like I got to rap, like, a rap for a lady or a rap for a lady and a rap towards a dude about a subject was like the same activity to me. It involves style, delivery, great subject matter, good references. If one had that sort of, I guess, memory or experience about seeing a lot of things and making sense of things, to use them in conversation for examples and stuff. But it was an activity, and that's what I saw. And once the block parties and everything started. Now, don't forget, I was more into rock and stuff at this point. So the way I'm looking at it was an activity, not as a musical genre yet at that point. You feel me?
Absolutely.
So, right. So it was like a community thing where guys came together and they're hashing things out or they're discussing things with a certain style and a certain, it was fascinating to me because I wasn't what you would call a street guy. I mean, I still grew up in the thick of all that stuff, but, my inclinations was towards a different direction, let's just say that. And, just seeing that sort of activity happen with the guys that were out there involved in what you would call the beginnings of that sort of music, that's how I saw it, like an activity and stuff like that, where guys would get together and rap about things. Man, I'm telling you, man, times are so hard. I can't believe it. And to me, it sounded lyrical. It was great. It's cool stuff. And then, once they started introducing like the the breaks, the James Brown breaks and the block parties. It wasn't yet defined, like you said. Right. It was like still like a man using his instrument with background music, or a band. In this case, the band being the DJ or the drummer or the guy hitting on the conga drums or whatever. Like rhythm and talking. Griot style. So that's how I perceived it.
You mentioned the relationship, of course, between community and the music that was coming out back then. What was it for you about rap that worked for you as a point of discovery back then? What was it that stuck out for you? What worked?
The idea that you could say something and say it how you wanted to say it and how it needed to be said, but in a very, I don't want to say safe, but a creative context. And I don't want to necessarily say musical because, rap was more than just musical, it's like words and a lot of stuff that go into it. But, for me, man, it was just a way to say what you had to say, the way you had to say it, when you had to say it, right? And whether it was intense or slick or whatever. And that appealed to me. And using the words, with the words, of course, just saying what that was the style and what would later become the technique and all of that stuff. So that was cool to me, having come from playing instruments, and not necessarily vocalizing or singing or stuff like that, just playing notes and rhythms on instruments. So hearing this thing with the words, for me, it kind of, I started saying, I wonder if I did this like this or approached it the same way, like, man, I could really do something cool with it. Everybody thinks that, but, I just thought it was a cool thing that attracted me to it so much, that you could say what you had to say, the way you had to say it, when you had to say it, that's, for the timing and stuff like that, and cadence. So, that's what got it. That's what was it for me.
Yo, what's up, Blast Master KRS-One? This jam is kicking. Word. Yo, what up, D Nice?
Yo, what's up, Scott LaRock?
Yo, man, we chilling this funky fresh jam. I want to tell you a little something about us. We're the Boogie Down Production crew. And due to the fact that no one outside there knew what time it was, we have to tell you a little story about where we come from. South Bronx, the South Bronx, the South Bronx, the South Bronx, South Bronx, the South Bronx, South Bronx, the South Bronx.
Many people tell me this style is terrific. It is kind of different, but let's get specific. KRS-One specialize in music. I'll only use this type of style when I choose it. Party people in the place to be. KRS-One attacked. You got dropped off MCA cause the rhymes you wrote was whack. So you think that hip-hop had its start out in Queensbridge? If you pop that junk up in the Bronx, you might not live, cause you're in
South Bronx, the South Bronx, the South Bronx, the South Bronx.
Me and another good friend of mine, Sheik, he used to, I think he would still rhyme if somebody asked him. But he was into rap before me. I also gave him a shout-out on the back of Hazardous as well. So, everything I'm telling you, this is the real, you're getting the straight dope. So, he had all of these tapes that he used to bring to the job. We were both illustrators, So he used to always listen to this stuff. I'd be listening to my rock music and guitar progressive stuff, and then he'd be on the other side of the room like boom, bat, 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 and da 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 da. And I'm like, it was so cool. So I said, man, lend me some of this stuff, man. Let me check this out. And he said, man, you gotta hear this. You gotta hear this. This is delayed. This is great. It's BDP. So I'm listening to that, and it was so clear what he was saying. You could understand what he was doing, why he was doing it, how they did it, and what they hoped to achieve by doing it. That was in every rhyme that I heard when I listened to this BDP album. My friend also loaned me at the same time the Public Enemy album and the Big Daddy Kane album. So those are the 3 albums that I actually sat down with. I was forced to at first from my buddy. You know, couldn't tear myself away from practicing guitar and just exploring that whole side of the thing. You know, but he said, man, come on, man. You know, he also inspired me to write my first rhyme, but that's another story. Another part of the story. So, yeah, man, that first, I would say BDP because I really listened to it. I mean, as far as just listening to somebody say something. You know, the PE was coming with the attitude. You know, it was a certain context they came, and, you know, that was a little more high-minded, let's say, as far as the presentation. Then Kane was, you know, just the braggadocio, you know, and that's a whole nother. I got into those 2 aspects, incorporated them later, as we'll probably get into. But the BDP, as far as just that straight, you know, like a open book, so to speak, you know, of presentation. So that album, I just listened to it repeatedly, you know, like,
of course.
And I heard how he did, you know, with the beat, he's on the beat, you know, and the you know, describing their process, how they make them, and Scott the rocks on the table, you know, and stuff like that. You visualized it. That was it. Once I visualized and understood, you know, what the object of the exercise was, you know, and then I said, wow, this, like eureka. You know, I can hear hip-hop now. I can hear it, you know.
What's interesting about this, of course, is that what makes your trajectory interesting is that you're not thinking of moving away from rock in your job as a designer at this point. You're not thinking of becoming an artist and an MC, are you? Or a producer at that point?
Oh, heck no. No. I loved music too much to ever think I would be in front of it, so to speak. Like, hey, look, I'm making... No, I was much happier doing beats for the guys in the neighborhood, and, you know, when it came, you know, that's a little further again. But I was much happier just exploring music for myself, trying to find out things and stuff, you know. So I when I was at the office and listening to, like, hip-hop, thanks to my buddy Sheik and stuff, and checking out tapes, no way. I didn't even, there's a point where I said, I wonder if I could, but I was never thinking that first listening and getting hit, having the impact from those records. I was never thinking, I could do this, I should do it, I'm going to do it. You know, or even with, guitar, I'll be honest. I did want to be a guitar hero. But I don't know if there weren't many black guitar heroes in the 80s. The hair wasn't, you know, it was a, you know, kind of different thing happening on the rock scene at that time.
Right. So did it take you long to be convinced to produce Sheik's demo?
It didn't take, okay, he said, hey, man, I want you to play some, man, you know what would be cool, man, if you played some guitar and you did, man, and, you know, and you did, and I said, yeah, but I don't know anything about to really back you on it. You know, you need to, no, man, you know, you could play guitar. You know, and he liked it because he was into Michael Jackson and Beat It and all of that stuff. And, you know, so he just saw this whole thing like musical instruments being played and guitar solos on his hip-hop stuff. And I said, but anyhow, he convinced me, and, you know, I did it, and, you know, I brought this cheap machine out of a pawn shop, I think, a Dr. Rhythm, and it was broken, you know, so I had to actually tap out the beats as they were going to each song. It was really awkward, and it sucked. Yeah, it sucked. I didn't understand, like, about the sequencing or any of that stuff. I just pulled this thing off the shelf, and then the guy says, yeah, you do this and this and this. And I said, oh, okay. And I'm taking it home and hitting this stuff. And I said, man, how do you keep it in time? And it was funny, man. It was really funny. And we did the whole thing like that. I got one of those little 4-track Tascams. Actually, I found that in some warehouse as well, like a flea market. and something, and that was broken as well. But I mean, again, I love the music so much that I just went in trying to find out as I did it. For me, that I get great joy out of that, like finding out as I'm doing it. Like I'm not satisfied with somebody telling me how something is. Hey man, you got this is the greatest. I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But when I'm doing the thing, then I'll find out for myself.
I think you just answered what I'm about to ask. You definitely spoke to it somewhat, but if you were to speak a bit more to what I'm about to ask, how do you think, when you think back about your sound in the beginning, what are your earliest memories of your production being defined by your choices versus the options you had?
Right. Well, I always envisioned something being you could say musical, even rhythmic wise. For me, just a drum track can be melodic. As far as just the arrangement of the tones and stuff like that. So I've always been musical in my approach. Not to say that I'm against anything that doesn't sound musical, but I will use anything in a musical way. That's my preferred format. Even noise or something that's unconventional. I would always try to incorporate it into a musical context, because if it's not about music, then what the heck is it? So that's pretty much how it was.
When you were starting to rhyme, who would have been some of the touchstone influences that inspired you to rap? You mentioned, of course, Big Daddy Kane. You mentioned KRS-One. Are you considering the impact and the way that Rakim approached his wordplay in terms of the way he likened his rap's connection to jazz?
Right. Now, what's weird about that is I really wasn't aware of that level of it, you can say, like the Rakim and even the Lakim Shabbat, all of that whole angle. I really wasn't aware of it, as I was developing my ears for it. You dig? Because I'm listening to just the thing that attracted me to it. He's saying something the way it needs to be said, with some kind of style, some sort of craft, some hint of craft in there, and that's a whole other aspect of the convo I'd like to get into. I'm sure we will get into it, but just checking out the delivery. The message wasn't like very important as a young person. The message is almost secondary. Sorry to say, a lot of times, rather than what's trending or something that just makes an impact on you creatively or spiritually or emotionally. So, I mean, I still have to point to, I was listening to all of that stuff when it came out, but still that Kane, BDP, Chuck D, that threesome right there, if you will, just made it, that just covered all the bases for me. So unfortunately, I was soul rocked by those three, and anything that came after that came almost through a lens of that, unfortunately. So that's why when that aspect of the music, the hip hop came, with the consciousness and I wasn't really on board with it 100%. Because I understood the necessity of the message and everything, but as an art form and entertainment, I really didn't put the two together like that. I didn't know if it was appropriate, or, you making money off of, I'm starting to think about it, and then the message, man, this other kid, man, Rakim and this stuff, and these guys is talking this stuff. Now, of course, Chuck D had a message too, but Chuck D, again, what I liked about him was that he was straight, like he's just talking, like in like a what you call those things, like a megaphone. Like he's
right.
That's the attitude I got. That's what the vibe I got from Chuck D. Like he's right by your ear with a megaphone in terms of the message, you know. And it's so I liked his delivery, his approach, and his delivery. I always dug it, you know, and his rhyme style. We could talk about it later, or you know, just when we get into the craft. But yeah, I mean, Rakim, that stuff is still amazing.
Sip the juice, I got enough to go around, and the thought takes place uptown. I grew up on a sidewalk while on street talk, and then taught to Hawk, New York. I go to Queens for Queens to get the food from Brooklyn. Make money in Manhattan and never been tooken. Go uptown to the Bronx and boogie down, get strong on the island, recoup and lay around. Time to build my juice back up, pop stack up, suckers get smacked up. Don't doubt the clout, you know what I'm about. Knocking niggas off, knocking niggas out, shaking them up, waking them up, breaking them up, breaking them up. Standing on shaky ground, too close to the edge. Let's see if I know the ledge.
I saw a tape the other day where he was they was doing like a throwback thing when he was promoting Juice, and he did Juice live at this I think it was like a broadcast TV show or something, and I believe Prodigy from Mobb Deep is introducing him. Wow. And then yeah, that's sick in itself. But once Ra starts the rhyme with Juice, the first few words, man, and I'm like, it's crazy. I had texted another colleague of mine, Sir Menelik, you know, and I said, yo, man. So I sent it to him, and I said, yo, this is it's like, and then Sir Menelik, he sent me back a message. I said, this is just straight crack. It's straight crack. You know, I said, damn, man, okay, I got you. Wow. See, I didn't think of it like that, but, you know, he's like a street dude, so it's funny, man.
What better way to describe that, right?
Yeah, it shocked the hell out of me. I mean, the way he describes what I do is funny, too, but, you know, but that's Sir Menelik.
How does he describe what you do?
Oh man, the terms are very terms and words are very very eclectic, very out there, very oh boy, this is I don't know. He says that I'm an influence on him, but I mean, I don't know. You know, I don't know. I mean, I know he started coming around and stuff, and you know, Keith brought him, and you know, it's cool. You know, it's cool. I dig the dude a lot, man. Love his art, and yeah, he has a lot of strange impressions to my mind about my own work. You know, and I don't know if I co-sign anything anybody says about me, because I can't know. You know, I can't get outside of myself, quote unquote, and say, yes, I agree with that 100%. You know, so I don't know. Whatever someone says about my art or the thing I do, then, you know, it's for someone else, I guess, to say, yeah, that's cool. So it's hard for me to even repeat them. You know, hey, he says that I'm the most gifted technician that ever. No, you know, I wouldn't repeat it if he said something like that. I don't know.
No,
I can't
understand.
co-sign.
Yeah.
That.
Going back to your relationship with hip-hop, rap, and how it's informed, how instrumental were labels like Profile and Select Records in informing everything you knew about hip-hop?
Oh, well, the first thing was that they had they signed a lot of people from the community. I mean, yes, the people in the community invented the art form. I get it. But for a record label at that time, you know, I guess we're looking at pop, R&B, and rock, and, you know, all of that stuff. We're not seeing that recording artist could be the guy next door to me, or the dude down the block, or the delivery man. And you know. So it was like a cool thing. And then, you know, you had these labels like Profile, Select, Next Plateau, and you would bump into everybody that seemed to get these deals now when the genre started taking off, you know. Like you'd bump into Special Ed, and you know he'd be talking, and Action would be talking. Then you go down the block, then there's Chubb, and they're at the basketball court, and they're freestyling, and then everybody's saying they're getting this deal, and he's going to be on this label, and it was wild for a minute. And these labels used to be so easy to step to, which was another thing that I miss from those days. Like, I can remember days when I'm walking through the city with a pocket full of demos, me and my crew from the neighborhood, and we just go up here, hey, man, you know, this is so-and-so, and you're going to hear from us soon, man. We're going to be the next one. Just leave your tape in that box over there, man. Boom, boom. And we just do this. We just go through the city the whole day, stop, get a pizza, then turn around and come back up the other side of the block. But, you know, it was crazy. I wish I had half of those tapes that I left in those boxes now. You know, I got a couple of them back, but I wish I could get them all back. You know, I used to just make demos for those boxes, believe it or not. Now, these 5 songs will really be cool. And run back up there. I got another tape. Oh, just throw it in that box. Right? You know, I used to do that like maybe once a month. Like just tapes and demos and tapes.
And each one is different and tailored for the label.
Of course. I mean, because Select had Chubb, Kid and Play, so you would put certain things that, I'm going to get a night go, you know, all of that kind of, you know, cool.
Right.
Poppy kind, you know. I don't want to describe anybody. I don't want to sound weird or twisted trying to describe anybody's stuff, but just my opinion of what was going on, that I would tailor the demo for that, you know.
So what's the starting point for Hazardous in 91? You're signed to Select Records, fast forward. How does that happen, in fact, before we get into the making of Hazardous in 91? You mentioned handing his tape in, dropping his tape in a letterbox.
Right.
Was anything from Hazardous on that tape? Were any demos?
No. As a matter of fact, let me see. There was material that was made before the material that appears on Hazardous came out. So, I mean, me and Chubb worked a little bit on some stuff. We vibed because we were in the neighborhood. We were introduced by a neighborhood friend of mine, and who used to take me to do block parties and freestyle and stuff. Yeah, he actually kind of gave me the moniker Don or Godfather. I'm trying to remember which side. I think I had Don first, and then he said Godfather, or whatever way it was. But anyhow, yeah, so there was material before that, because when this dude introduced me to Chubb Rock, he took me over his house. Chubb listened to some of those same tapes and said, oh, wow, man, this is interesting. I said, well, you know, I'm just doing stuff, man. You know, I love the music and blah, blah. But I like rock and I play. He said, oh, yeah, but, you know, you should really, I tell you what, man, come hang out. So then that started the relationship with Chubb Rock and, you know, going over to his house. And we lived in the same neighborhood, basically. So I'd just hang out over there and we'd talk about music and rhymes and stuff. Or I'd see him in the park. Yo, what's up, man? Hey, what up, Don? Yo, come by later. You know, and at that time, I think he was working with the A-Team, trying to get them up and running. Right? And so it was cool. Then Special Ed would be in the area, and they, you know, that was like a loose association and stuff. So it was pretty cool. You know, the Howie T and Special Ed, Chubb Rock thing. And so, you know, eventually Chubb brought me up to Select, and then that was pretty much it. It wasn't, I don't know. It happened kind of fast, you know. If I, you know, just reflecting on it, I think it happened a lot faster than I would have preferred it going, you know.
You'd anticipated, right?
Yeah, of course. I would always would like to have done that different. But anyhow, it's very exciting. You up there and he's showing you this, and the owner of Select is talking this, and and I'm like, man, you know what? Yeah, all this sounds nice, but where is that chick Roxanne, man? The Roxanne that that one. And he starts laughing. He says, "Oh man." He's like, "That's the reason. That's all you're thinking about coming up." You say, "Yeah, man, I want to be." And I used to come there like all the time, just, "Hey, man, where's Roxanne?" It was incredible, man. He said, "Don, I can't figure you out, man. I'm trying to sign you to a record deal, man, and you're over here trying to find out other artists, man. Looking for them." But yeah, that was basically it. Chubb brought me up there. We talked a little bit, and he said, "Yeah, man, why don't you guys just go hang out in Questar's house and see what you come up with?" Questar Welsh, that was one of the engineers of that time. It's like Howie T. Questar wasn't really a producer, but I guess like Ivan, Doc Rodriguez, there was a few of those guys around, like everybody would go to. And Questar Welsh was like one of those dudes that everybody, people would go to, like doing hip hop. They were in the neighborhood. They had a feel for the music. They understood the culture a little bit, more or less. And, so me and Chubb would hang out in Questar's place and just vibe and do stuff. It was like an album worth of material, man. And I'm playing guitar on a lot of it. I play acoustic, and me and Chubb are talking and stuff and imitating the blues. And it's like I wish I would have had copies of it, man. But anyhow, Questar Welsh. I wonder if I'm saying his name right. Yeah, he lived downtown Brooklyn when I was going there. And yeah, he had a really nice studio at the time, man. Really, really cool, man. And I guess he was into like rock and stuff like that. Now, reflecting back on it, just the certain equipment and things he had in the house, and I said, so I was in love with that place, man. I said, "Wow, you got this guitar and this guitar." He says, "Yeah, man, you play guitar?" I said, "Man." So, and that was cool. He said, "Man, let me record this." That's why on the Hazardous, you hear a guitar solo on the first record, because that was a carryover from a lot of the stuff that I did with Chubb at Questar's house, and I said, "Man, I gotta have some guitar." And that's why I'm walking on the back with a guitar. I mean, Fred thought of another connotation, I guess, with the guitar and Little Italy and stuff, but Godfather Don, I'm like, okay, I get it. But I wasn't thinking of it like that. I'm like, I'm taking my guitar to the studio, and they're trying to promote it like, yeah, Godfather Don with his instrument in his case. Wink, wink, he's going to do work with his crew. And I'm like, man, I just want to go and open the case and play some guitar someplace. It's funny.
Would this have been your first time in a studio back then?
Yeah, real studio. I mean, quote unquote, yeah. Everything else was basically in my living room or maybe some dudes who were a little more advanced in their basements and stuff like that. But nothing you could officially call a studio, with bookkeeping and other heads coming in there that you may recognize. So it was very, very new to me, and it was quite an experience. I have one really nice photo from that, a very good photo some cool person took, and I was thinking of publishing it. It was with the engineer who did my album. And I don't think he's no longer with us, but that's why I didn't really want to publish it. But it's the only photo I have from the making of Hazardous, believe it or not. It's the only photo I have.
Hey, yo, Don. Yeah. As soon as you got like 10,000 different styles, right? Once you kick like 3 verses and we quit it. I'm ready for action, two fraction from a contraction. Just sit back and attract and react to the way I decay, the way I display. I run a relay held together by my DJ in the rear, but my suckers near and those who dare. I'm housing your ass like welfare. Pro say am I, you say semi. But when I challenge you to pick up the MIC, you start shitting your new dime was getting rough, sitting tough and you still hopping puff. Enough, I'm rushing, crushing, full of bussin'. Don't wanna cuss, but they're full of something newer. Unlike manure, more like the sewer slime. It took a whole crew to do a rhyme. More dope than a whole row of Anderson. MC's panicking, stiff like mannequins.
What was your writing process like back then?
Oh man, it was like everything that was in there, I just put it out. That's why it was so dense. I mean, in my own opinion, it was very dense. Because by that time, I had already developed what, I guess the guys in the hood or, my crew, what they would call a style. I had developed something like that already. And, and I was enamored with the idea of approaching the same word, subject matter with different cadences, breakdowns, or, I just thought it was great that you can say a phrase 4 different ways depending on how you felt and how, that was great because that was like playing an instrument. To me, that was like doing a guitar solo. You wouldn't play it the same way twice over the same solo break. You wouldn't. You just wouldn't. Or I wouldn't play the sax the same way over a solo section now. I wouldn't do it. So I've always approached it like that. Even writing the words down, right? I never wrote them down. I do now, but when I wrote lyrics back then, I never wrote them as they were supposed to be said. Like, it's going to be said in this cadence, with this pattern, with this accent.
Interesting.
And this, I didn't dream of doing it like that back then. I just wrote what I wanted to say, right? Alluding back to that Chuck D, BDP thing. Like, I just wanted to say a certain thing, the way I wanted to say it, how it should be said, when it should be said. So I would just write it like that. Then when I got in the studio, I would do all of these hundreds of takes where I would say it this way. Then I would do another take and say it that way. Then I would do another take and say it this way. And that, that was like the origin of why I would end up with so many demo tapes, so many takes, which everybody knows about by now. But, so I it was almost like sheet music for a jazz musician, or at least just the chart. And then, you vibe it, however you're going to vibe it. So that's how I did it. I would write the content and then recite it however it felt at the moment.
Would I be mistaken in thinking that Organized Confusion are releasing and recording their debut around this point as well?
Yeah, so I don't know if that story is going around, but there was like a bunch of groups doing their records at the same time in Power Play Studios, which was like a hub, a hip-hop hub back then. And I was in one room, and the photo I have is me in that room with the engineer, and I just used to go in there and vibe all day and just bring all my records, no drum machine. That's one rap album. That was like the only rap album done without a drum machine, believe it or not. So,
wow.
Yeah, hey. But, so in the next room, there's a guy coming around going, yo, man, this is nice, man. Yo, you need to, man, come check out what we're doing, man. And, this guy used to come and say, man, come on, listen to it. Man, me and my partner, Prince, we're over there, man, How much, man? My name is Prince Poe, man. Yo, come over here. And he would, I said, okay, I'm going to come through, man. And I came through one day, and I heard this wonderful music, man. I'm like, this is nice, man. This is nice. I think it was a song they were doing called Roosevelt Franklin, if I'm not mistaken. It may have I don't know if the title is still that or not, but I just remember it. And they had this really nice weather report sample, like a drum loop, and I said, this is nice. It's nice. It's nice. And I liked it because I didn't hear any drum programming and stuff. I was really a fan of samples and loops. Oh, God. You know, if I thought drum machines were going to be at least drum machines as they were used back then, if I thought that was going to be part of my sound, I probably wouldn't have done it, you know, or wouldn't have moved forward with music the way I wanted to do it, because I didn't understand the necessity of a drum machine behind some of these great records that had excellent drums already, you know?
Right.
So, you know, again, I would go over there, and Organized Confusion was there. Then another time, another dude came over and said, yo, man, I need some music, man, like that. So he's saying all this stuff, and I said, hey, who is this guy, man? Man, you need to come in. And it was a group called Mob Style.
Look over there and smile, cause
U.S. says mob is dying in New York.
Their enterprise, say police, is now dismantled.
As the mafia gets run out of business,
the young guys who are watching these and admiring the mobsters,
they wish to be more than just criminals. They wanted to be a mafia.
Time, AZ's back with a crime rhyme. Out to get mine, hold your quarters, your dimes. Don't snitch, cause life is a bitch. They just trying to get all the niggas they could get in prison. But I won't break, I just wait and then retaliate. Bullets will penetrate when I leave the state. Mission accomplished, no mistakes. Always on my job when dough is involved. Me and my wife, cause she's married to the mob. Side by side in my ride like Bonnie and Clyde. The car was ruthless. Those that approach left toothless. So don't try to pursue this or uproot this. Cause I'm full grown, bad to the bone. 132 was known as a danger zone. The 18 serving the fiends. Making sure they lean as they conquer green. Dead presidents down low. Cars intense. Cause we play for keeps, never sleep. Always awoke when an enemy approach. No joke. They just choke from the gun smoke. Now they can't count the amount that bodies are found, gagged and bound. Out for the count to lose. Sporting cement shoes.
It was a group called Mob Style, and this rapper was named, I think his name was, I forget, and I don't want to say it wrong, but anyhow, that was the group, and they were doing some incredible music as well. But that Organized Confusion story, that I always remember that one, because that's when me and Prince Poe, you know, became kind of buds at that time. And Pharaoh was cool too, but you know, I didn't really get a chance to really develop anything too close with Pharaoh, you know.
Meeting Ultra Mag MCs, how does that happen, which ultimately winds up with you becoming an honorary member of Ultra Mag for the Four Horsemen album?
The fifth Beatle?
right.
Yeah, the fifth Beatle, that was the end joke, the fifth Beatle. And I never tried to do that, by the way. That was not my intention, because everybody knows I was doing other things with other people. So that really wasn't, for the record. But yeah. So let's see, Hazardous. So I'm doing a bunch of demos. Everybody knows those demos by now. After Hazardous and before Hydra stuff. Doing a lot of demos, just meeting a lot of people, fielding a lot of, guys saying stuff. Hey, we want you to do this. Hey, come by my label. And I'm saying, yeah. And I'm developing my own little home setup, so I'm not really in a hurry to get in the studio for somebody, like it happened with Select, like, being in an actual studio. And at this time, I had my own little setup at home that was good for what I was doing, which was basically making demos. And so they used to have these things called like music conventions. I forgot what they called them in New York. They had them every year, and you'd mail away to get these tags, and they'd have the tags for you when you show up, and that gave you like a 3-day pass, and you go to all of these events, seminars. It was called a New Music Seminar,
right?
And they used to have it every year in New York. And I said, man, we got to go to one of those. So the same guy who introduced me to Chub Rock, you know, he used to go to all of these things and politic and talk and just do his thing. So one day he said, man, you know, this year you should go, man. You know, you really need to go, Don, because there's a lot of people up there, man. And, you know, come on, man. I said, you never know. So I said, all right, man. So we go. Now, I don't have a tag. So I said, man, how am I going to get in there? They're checking everything. He said, nah, don't worry, man. Not everybody has a tag. So we're walking around the venue, outside, of course, and we're talking to people. And so the dude I'm with, he bumps into this dude, and they're talking. You know, apparently he's a rapper, and, you know, people around him, yo, man, let me get an autograph. So I'm like, okay. So then he says, Don, come over here, man. So he said, yeah, man, this is Keith, man. Yeah, man. He says, yo, so what's up, man? What you guys doing? And, you know, so my friend is saying, we trying to get in? And so Keith was like, yeah, man, I didn't get my tag either, man, but I'm trying to get in too, man. So we end up sneaking in some kind of way, Keith probably could walk in. He was royalty at that point already, so we could just walk in with him, and, you know, we got in there. Then we just started talking a lot, hanging out, and having a lot of hijinks. After the event, you know, we came outside, and we're still talking about stuff, and blah, 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 and you know, my friend is like, hey, man, you know, Don does a real nice beats, man, and he does, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then the details are very foggy of, you know, chronologically what happens, but eventually he ends up coming over my house, and, you know, we end up just making some demos and stuff and doing things. You know, I guess he heard some things I did already. I mean, the Hazardous album was already out, and, you know, I was doing demos and circulating a lot of demos, a lot. So, you know, these demos would end up in everybody's hands. I think a lot of the beats, you know, I used to give away a lot of the beats on the tape, so it was almost like beat tapes as well. You know what I mean? Or things that people could probably or were probably looping and doing stuff with. So anyhow, again, long story short, Keith came over to the house, and, you know, he'd listen. He would always listen. We'd hang out, and we, you know, do a lot of hanging out at that time. A lot of talking music, hanging out, and then we eventually did some demos, which were promos from. Well, they weren't meant to be promos, but some of them just ended up being like promos. We would mention Bobito's show on them because for me, I started listening to that show. A guy turned me on to the show, so I said, man, he plays these demos and blah, blah. I could do that, man. I could do that. So then I started making these demos, and I would send them, and Bob would play one or not play one or whatever the case was. And then, you know, Keith came over, and then I'd say, hey, man, let's do something, man. And then we start doing these tapes. And then I'd start doing them with other people, and then it became like a thing at that point. So that's how we met, at the New Music Seminar. I forgot what year it was.
Who you are, or what your age may be, if you want to achieve permanent, sustaining success, the motivation that will drive you toward that goal must come from within.
Yeah, yo Don, give me a little bit of that chicken, that smooth chicken, a little bit of that gravy. And I want them old hot jazz biscuits with a little bit of that blues butter. Bring in a snare.
They never understood many people were so slow. My funky type of rhyme and my style is psycho. Complex, Rex, my style go XX. I move around off beat, creating more styles, showing white boys, other kids my black styles. I kick lyrics like shoes right in your face. Walk up on the car, jack a spade, pluck the ace. I get slow off, down, in, on, in. Flowing like I used to be on Critical Beatdown. I drop styles on ears, the public bite them. Now many went to school so the dummies wouldn't write them. They say, yo, Keith, you're cool, you using big words. I went to college, I'm even more stupid, heard. Back on the scene to pull a lesson out. Even if I have to pull a Blacksmith and Wesson out. I grab a hammer, stick a nail in that little crack. Tame the monkey, show the hummingbird how to act. I get atomic, hypo, galactica. Word to mom, I'm in my own world. Galaxy rays, powerful.
In a bar of, like, one bar sampled music of jazz, you could come up with endless loop points or endless motifs or ideas, obviously depending on the record and what you're using. Sure. But as compared to other musics like blues, like straight blues, or rock and roll records or rock records that we would sample, basically 1-4-5 or rock progressions, blues progressions played with electric instruments, blah, blah, blah. So in a bar of these wonderful records that I would get, these Blue Note records and these Prestige records, there was so much happening with the arrangements and the orchestrations that a bar taken at the right spot would, for me, create a whole new musical work. Not to sound very technical about it, as far as legally, but, for me, it was like a new work. You know what I mean? So jazz represented that aspect of creating hip-hop music for me. That's what it was about jazz. And I didn't really recognize too much that other guys were into it or doing it, believe it or not. Again, for me, the music, I was like a self-starter with music, you can say. I still don't read. I mean, I understand what's on the paper, but I don't read music. I have musical compositions that, buddies of mine transcribe, but I don't read and write music necessarily in that way. So just these wonderful records with these lush orchestrations just had so much information that one bar could create a whole new vista as far as I saw it, once looped in the proper way, or the appropriate way. Let's put it that way.
We're talking about texture, aren't we? We're talking about tonality, and this is something that rejuvenated you back then as a producer.
Tell me about it. I mean, right? You can. How many times so and so X, Y, and Z has been sampled, and each time it's used is almost a classic. It's a beautiful phenomena of sampling, and just the particular those records, those important records that were sampled, and what they represent for the culture. The hip hop music. So that's what the jazz did for me. Yeah. I mean, just represented endless vistas and just modes, and it's never a dull moment in jazz.
We're bouncing around chronologically. I understand that. You mentioned Cenobites as an idea, and you've talked about it to execution briefly with Kool Keith. How did those records open you up back then?
Okay. Now, right, I guess what we're discussing here would have to be after Hazardous and before Hydra. Right. That's the way the hip-hop world defines it for me. Post-Hazardous and pre-Diabolique, So I'm like, okay, all right, Internet, you got it.
You'll take it.
So, yeah. So all of those demos, now for me, it even goes a little bit deeper as in the sections, the eras. Post-Hazardous is those records that I guess you might find on that HHV release,
right.
Beats Bangers, and right. So, yeah, that's like a lot of early stuff. And there was so many more demos that I did that were even better than those, believe me. But I didn't have access to them I don't even want to go into it. But, yeah, so I was doing a lot of demos. And now the records that we did that people know as the Cenobites, they were a collection of promos. Now, there are a couple of songs, like I said, man, let's do a song. You know, you do a verse, I do a verse, and you do a verse. Or you do a verse, I do a verse, and then we split the last verse. You know, I did a couple of those, too. And those kind of ended up being the song, you know, part of what makes the Cenobites a real record. You know, there's songs on it. You know, there's a complete verse and not just a few lines and then, yeah, shout out to KCR, yo, but,
right.
You know.
You're starting to build a canvas.
Yeah, right. So we didn't really set out to say, let's make a Cenobites project. Okay. I think it would have been handled a lot different. But it just happens that those particular records that featured Keith on them and me and Bob and, you know, had the KCR thing vibe in there, you know, knowing that when we were doing these, knowing that they may be played the next week on Bob's show. I guess that's what made it a Cenobites type record, if you could call it that later, you know. Back then, we wouldn't say that, but I guess you could say if it was Cenobites material, that was the criteria, that we went into it knowing that Bob would play this coming weekend. We usually get together like before Bob's show, yeah, what are we going to do? And then once that word start getting out, hey, man, they're going to do some more stuff for next week. Hey, man, can I get on one? Hey, man, what is it? Yeah. And that's when it just started getting crazy. So I'm like, forget this. This is not going to happen. I'm not doing this stuff anymore.
Do you think people understand the full capacity of the impact of your run with Kool Keith as the Cenobites?
I think it has yet to be mined. I mean, it was so dense as far as concepts, lyrical approaches, patterns, technique. I mean, at that time, I just wanted to be a straight shredder. You know, I wasn't really even interested in a message at that point. You know, like the way a young guitar god would be. You know, like right. Like wow, you know, and yeah, you know, which is okay in some aspects for hip hop. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, he's nice. You know, not that I knew I was nice, but the idea of being nice was important in hip hop at that time.
You have to
at
be
least
nice.
Right. So that was like a burning desire for me, man. Like, I gotta be nice. I gotta be. You know, Keith used to laugh how I used to obsess about it. You know, he said, "Man, you should just do it. You use what you got. Use what you have here already." No, man, I gotta write. I gotta do it again. Oh man, yeah, you trying to. That's Keith, man. You trying to really wreck stuff. You trying to destroy. Oh man, you trying to just burn everything down. You don't want nobody to have. And but I like the idea that you could push it.
Right.
Right? You know, when something's set there and it's done already, I always saw the next thing. This is why I would hardly listen to anything that I would record, believe it or not. I mean, that's why some of those, I haven't memorized a quarter of the songs that I've written. I haven't memorized anything.
Wow.
I know. Please don't tell anybody that. But, I mean, if I had to memorize something, I mean, Jazz has trained me to do that now. So, I mean, I probably could do it. Like, if I had to do, like, some kind of show or something like that, I probably could do it. But, I mean, when I was putting those things together, I would just write it, recite it however it felt at that time, do another take if I needed to, or try another version and see if that worked. Boom, then throw it in the drawer or the shoebox, right. And then just move on to the next one. I could write that better. No, this wordplay, this.
If I were to ask you what you felt right now was some of the best examples of your writing on those songs and projects, would you remember?
Right.
Would you be able to recall?
Yeah, I could remember. If we're talking about Cenobites era things, then yeah, I would say pretty much most. I would say like 75% of what people hear that's labeled Cenobites. I think a lot of that I'm kind of happy with in terms of what I was going for. As far as presentation, technique, extremities. Yeah, right. Because I was even willing to change my voice in it. I didn't think that was a crime. I mean, now I probably wouldn't feel to do it as much, but back then, as a musician, quote unquote, sometimes I felt you would need to use a distortion pedal, right? Or you would need to use a flanger or a chorus pedal to get a sweet sound. And I'm like, vocalists do this all the time from the 40s, 50s, 60s. So what's this? What if I want to change? Or if I want to, but you don't. I mean, on Hazardous, the last song, right? I think I did 3 different. I mean, maybe you want to call them styles, but I mean, I guess technically you could say approaches. That's on the title track, where a friend of mine, Chris, from Chris Music Concepts, is on there. He's saying, yo, Don, why don't you do another style? Do a different approach this time. On this verse, try. All the verses are extra long. Songs are all extra long. I didn't really care about no commercial time constraints. I'm like, I didn't understand the industry as a, an industry at that point, with norms and rules. And I just said, man, this is what I have to say. Boom. And it's crazy. But the Cenobites, 75% of that, I would say, is what I could listen back to and go, oh, man, wow, what was I thinking? That's crazy. That's crazy.
Come in. Yes, X74. What's up, Nomad 107? We want to do this. We got a special guest with us. Let's do this. We got 5'9". You know what we gonna do? Kick up the verse and then we ghost. 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 I got a brand new Ford, bright orange yellow pickup truck, cruising around like I'm Johnny Esposito, pumping my funk tape with Stretch and B Barbito, looking around for that kid that robbed Joey. Catch another rapper rob slowly in the back of your head, feel the calico ammo. You know the X, hey, he's out the hospital. He played a trumpet in class, plus he had a fiddle. He had a house uptown on Green Apple Road, a human body buried monkey plus a little toad. Scared Federal Bureau, fuck investigation. No phones, no beats, fuck communication. I like ice cream kids, I like Carvel.
And a lot of this, like you say, was being played on Stretch Armstrong and Barbito.
Right, which was surprising to me at first. I mean, if he played one, I figured, yes, it's a radio station, a fan sends this in. Now, I did do a couple for mainstream, quote-unquote, hip-hop radio. I don't know if you ever heard that promo with me and a buddy of mine named Kareem, who I used to run with back in the days, in Flatbush. I used to do, again, the promo thing was happening, so everybody wanted to do these promos. Yeah. So I used to, so I did a couple from, let me see, it was Hot 97 or 107. I think I did a few of those for the regular radio stations. And believe it or not, they played those. And I said, oh, wow. So there's a few recordings that people reminded me of that I did. And it just let me know that the promo thing was a really cool idea. I mean, it was great. Like the artist actually doing something, quote unquote, live or just for the radio station and the fans. I thought it was a cool thing.
You mentioned a radio station. What are your recollections of the jazz department at the station?
Oh, God. Oh, look, man. There's some stories, man, of going up to KCR, because KCR had this dude that Bob used to joke about called the Jazz Man. He would come on after Bobito's show, I believe, and he would, just play all these weird, crazy Now, right. I'm saying, whoa! Now, the first time I went up to Bobito's show, I'm walking to the studio and I'm looking at these racks and racks and racks. And the first thing Bobito says to me, he's like, Don, please do not mess with none of Jazzman's records. And I'm like, can I at least just look at them? He said, you can look at them, man. You can look at them, okay? And I'm looking at, it was like being at the Holy Grail, man. All nice promotion. You know, when you get the sticker on it, the white sticker, promotional Oh, you.
You're in a candy store.
Man, look, they had to tie me up like Hannibal Lecter and roll me into the studio before they would, take off my belts and buckles and everything,
Speaking of Hannibal Lecter, there's a lot of crazy artists during that time. One of those crazy artists was Cage. What about that WKCR promo with Cage? I believe there was about 3 of them, if I'm right. What was that like?
Yeah. Now, Cage was a great artist. Now, I didn't know about his thing with Eminem at that time, or I don't know how early it goes back, the thing with him and Eminem. But I understood Cage to be like another trailblazer, like a dude who was doing something, quote unquote, different, or at least something other than what I was doing, which I could always appreciate because that would just allow me to really listen to it as it is, not like as a copy or something trying to be something else. So I just listened. And, I think it was something put together by Bob. I'm not sure the first time we hooked up, but a lot of things surrounding that promo. A lot of the stuff that was said on it from me was in reference to a situation that was happening in my personal life, and which is why it's called Hot Crib promo, because we actually did that in Bob and Stretch's then apartment or home, where I forgot where it was exactly, but yeah, my equipment was over there for that's another story why I was over there. But we made the promo there, and I believe Cage was coming to see Bob or something, but, it's just everything aligned and came together. And Beastie Boys was there as well, believe it or not. Or I think maybe 1 or 2 of them. I didn't really know them well at that time, but I believe Stretch was friends with them and Bob as well. So, so they were there, and Cage came through, and we talked, we laughed. I liked his vibe, and it was cool, man. And I just threw something together and said, okay, how about this?
Dope.
And Stretch said, yeah, that'll work. I said, okay, let's go.
Dope.
We just did it like that.
What was it like recording at Stretch and Bob's house?
It was weird, which is why my verse on that record sounds very, very unpleasant, harsh, very antagonistic, and not my usual. It just wasn't fun. Now it was the utmost enjoyment to do it with Cage or any other artist. In the art, that's a whole different vibe for me. Once I'm involved with the art, that's I disappear. What you would call the self, that's gone. Now it's just the energy of creation happening. But the things that I was going through in my personal life at that point was of such a nature that it was hard to really focus on having a cool time making a promo, you know. And at that point, the promos were becoming like a chore, you know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, it's still a dope record, you know, but I'm just remembering, like you said, how it was doing it at Stretch House. I didn't want to do it at Stretch in Bob's house. But you know, the reason it ended up being that was one of the reasons why I sound like that on that record, you know, and I start losing it at the end of it, and just, you know, there's a freestyle on Bobbito's show with Keith where the same thing happened. You know, it was during that same time. It may have been that same week. I'm not sure. And I just could not focus on having a good time. I think Keith was up there too. Keith was aware of what was going on, and I think he was enjoying that I was kind of in that state of mind as far as what it reflected on the creativity, you know. That's how crazy Keith was, you know, or how crazy he is, you know, or is.
Yeah. Father's in the peace. Ready to release. The masterpiece. Releasing strange currents. Spread out, the dreads out, about putting heads out to pasture, mental disaster, blast the lead out, the scientific rhyming terrific till the end, and win. The birds concludes, move on the skins, the flesh, the stress, from the test of your stamina, like the camera when you take one step and I'm a damager like J-Rule, they who playful, hit the shakes when they rap again, while I'm packing in the fucking pigs, nothing fakes, it's nothing tastes like the genuine article, I'm sparking crews like bags of weed and number, Hammers do design the brothers, like Michael Ben did McCullough, discover the rougher lyrical butter to smother your arteries, just a part of me's enough to kill ya. For real, serial killers, down the pillar, cap I'm filthy, like Bixby, without the camera. Susanna owed me 10 grand, man, I slammed her. Yesterday I blew the best away like Jeff Bridges, a rap assassin, bashing niggas and they bitches. I got you stuck off the real nigga. Yeah, I got you stuck off the real nigga.
Which takes us to Hydra.
Right.
Fast forward, of course. Would I be accurate in saying that your first Hydra release was supposed to have been stuck off the realness, but only 100 copies of the test pressing were ever produced?
So, after I'm brought to Hydra through Mike Heron, I don't know if you know him.
Absolutely.
He went on to, yeah, okay. So, you know, I'm running around with Keith at this point. You know, we're going up Broadway, walking around 42nd Street and 8th Avenue and 9th Avenue, just hanging out, talking music, eating pizza, going in stores, bookstores, wink, wink, bookstores, and all kind of stuff, and just hanging out. And, you know, that was the district. And, you know, you see Melly Mel up there in the city, and you see all these other cool dudes, and, you know, and it's great. And I ran into Tim Dog that same day that I ran into that Mike Heron first met me that day, like in Manhattan as well on 8th Avenue. And Tim Dog was selling this record with the rest of Ultramagnetic in the back of a trunk, and they're giving out these cassettes, and it's called Fuck Compton, I believe. I don't remember it exactly, but it's like these, you know, the cassettes, and they're like, yeah, Dog, you know, blah, blah, blah. And Keith said, oh, yeah, this is Tim Dog, you know, and blah, blah, blah. It's a set and everything. And I'm like, yeah, boom. And we introduced, and I'm like, yo, my brother, what's up? So he said, yeah, man. And I said, I love your verse on the chorus, you know, whatever. And he says, yeah, this is my new joint. And they're handing out these tapes, and I took a couple of them. Wish I had my copies, but, you know. And I met Heron that same day. I think he was around talking to them as well, or something. And he just said, yo, man, you need to come by Hydra, man. And, you know, me and, you know, Jerry, we got this thing happening, man. You need to get down. So we hooked up. He brought me by, and, you know, he was already aware of what was going on. So I didn't really have to play any demos or audition. He just said, yo, what you want to do, man? I said, well, what you want to do? And that was that. So again, started making demos. He said, yeah, man, why don't you, try to see what you can come up with for an album. So I started, I just like making demos. So I started making demos with that in mind. And one of the records that I had already was a record called Stuck Off the Reel. And he liked it so much that he wanted to use it. And I said, all right, man, all right, we could use it. And he said, well, but I'd like to record it over, because, and I said, And at that point, I was very leery about re-recording something I made from my house because I didn't like the way it sounded. Like once you re-record something, I didn't believe you could capture the same magic.
Right.
But we went ahead and recorded a bunch of tunes that I already had that he heard. And he said, I like this. Yo, man, why don't you do this for a record? And I said, okay. So it was a few of those tunes. So that was one that I did do. And I said, man, I don't like it. He said, yo, man, it's cool. I said, I don't like it. It don't sound like the original, man. Listen to the original. Then we would always listen to the original that I made at home. Then we listened to that version. And he would end up saying, but the new one is cleaner and blah, blah, blah. And I said, nah, man, it's just not. And I never really signed off on it, believe it or not. I mean, look, I had the demo and, I like that. So I wasn't going to change my mind on that.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of other records like that, too. I said, nah, I would rather just do something new for you and with you and not try to recreate those Cenobite era outtakes or demos and stuff,
And that spirit and energy be lost in translation.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I felt about that that version, what's called the Simo Greens version. That was Hydra Studio. So I wasn't a fan. So I never signed off on it as a single. Wasn't feeling it. He knows this, so I'm not saying anything crazy.
Yeah. What do you remember about Seeds of Hate and recording that?
Oh, that was fun. Now, by this time, I'd been going to Power Play a lot. So, I started hanging out with Cuss a lot, right? That was the engineer. I forgot his last name, damn, but Cuss. A kid called No. Cuss. I forgot it. Heck, I forgot what his nickname would be that people would know him as an engineer.
Right.
But Cuss was doing a lot of things for a lot of cats too. And I'm sorry I can't remember all the cool guys he was working with. But anyhow, he was in there in Power Play, and there was a few other people. But Cuss was kind of cool. He was into what I was doing, and I felt comfortable working with him. He started to know my workflow. Hey, Don, I got you all set up. So one of those songs was Seeds of Hate that I did, and Piece of the Action, I think, was the same day. So they kind of have the same kind of thing going on. But Seeds of Hate, I really dug that because I love the sample. That was one of the first few records that I tried to take a drum set from a record, the complete drum set, and not really mix it up too much, like snare from here, hi-hat from there. I wanted to use, I went through a phase where I would try to take the set from one record, no matter how hard it was to get each piece, but to take even the ambient sounds from the drum loop or the drums from a particular record or sample and have that as the actual background to the loop or the bass line,
right.
Whatever you call it. So, and I liked it, and the subject matter was very, esoteric, occult, or, I was really studying a lot of very different kind of material in books at that point. So my reference material was very crazy back then, very disturbing, some might say.
It really seeps into your presentation as far as the design as well. You could look at the Godfather Don logo, and it kind of speaks to this black metal influence it was back then.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I loved black metal music. am I allowed to say that as a hip hop artist? I mean, so many records. So my black metal collection was almost as heavy as my hip hop. Well, my hip hop collection wasn't that heavy. I would basically listen to whoever was new out, just buy it, just to see what's going on, like research. Hear it. First Kid Rock album, first Kid Rock album, first this, all right. So I had a real nice collection of tapes that I had sold recently. But, so the Godfather Don logo, definitely black metal influence. So that's cool. I guess everybody can peep that out. No, maybe not, but it was certainly in my mind back then. As a lot of my vocals at that time on the Cenobites stuff, right? Or those my home demos, people could hear that. 7 Degrees of Elevation, certain, all of those type of songs, the Rhymes I Sniff, all of that stuff, very black metal influence.
Talk to me about the different palette you went for the Hydra Beat series.
Yeah. Okay. That's the MPC 60, right? Which Mike Heron says, man, this dude uses that machine. It makes it sound like an orchestra. That's his quote, not mine.
It's true.
So, yeah. So thanks. And, I just had I got these hundreds and hundreds of discs. I still have hundreds of discs, man. So if you know anybody with an MPC 60 that would loan it to me, I'd love to just dump all of these beats I have on these hundreds of discs, man, that I made on the MPC 60. And I would just experiment with all of these snares and drums and this and that. Again, that was a time I was trying to just take drums off of records, no matter how hard it was to get the drums from a particular song, or like where it wasn't just a drum loop, it was drums in the song, right. But the drums are so wonderful that I had to find a way to extract them, and those were mainly the Hydra beats was like a result of all of that experimentation. And just using the most weirdest loops I could find, or,
Love it.
Stuff like that.
Love it.
A lot of experimenting.
I've heard you say you were intimidated in a studio environment. How instrumental was Vic in you navigating from a basement to a studio environment? When you look back at that support system and mentorship you had with Vic,
right.
What did you learn about maintaining a sense of fluidity in a creative atmosphere making music with Vic?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Vic was the man. Vic he exposed me to the studio ethic, like prepping and breaking down, the idea of breaking things down, of keeping your disc marked properly, BPMs written on it. Can you imagine? A lot of my first discs never had the BPMs like written on it. So,
wow.
I mean, yeah. So, I would just have to load them and find out what this was. And Vic would go, "You're wild, Don. You're a wild man," you know. So then I would start, you know, marking things, and you know, and then working with he showed me good studios, what makes a good studio, good engineer, you know, Troy Hightower versus Jamie Staub, this one, Green Street. So just the whole studio rat thing, that I got that education with Vic, or that introduction with VIC, with Vic. You know, because I like the beat nuts, I like Juju, and I like the idea that a beat maker could be an artist himself as a beat maker, which is cool. I thought it was great. I mean, that part of it I did like, believe it or not. I said, yeah. But, man, just to be a beat maker and not have any words, you got to have some words. So I just said, you got to rhyme. You got to rap, man. So I just ended up doing everything. But in the studio, it was great. You know, Vic showed me how to be comfortable in the studio, what it meant to be comfortable in the studio, and getting there early and getting a nice vibe going. And it was cool. A lot of nice sessions, a lot of nice places, a lot of nice gigs and stuff. It's cool. That time with Vic and when we formed the Groove Merchants, all of that time, that was some cool stuff. That was a fun time. Very fun time.
And it wasn't a production team where you had to do everything together. It was purely a passion project for you, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, can you imagine somebody being on the same page with you creatively? That was great.
It's a blessing.
I mean, where your conversation, it's like the other person is thinking of it before you. Man, we're talking in Vic's Jeep and we're driving around digging for records. We're like, man, why can't basses sound like this? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, man, and why does it have to sound so thin? That's what I'm saying. The next thing I do, man, I'm going to make it like, yeah, I'm working on something like that. Listen to this. Oh, wow. Well, listen. And I would just do a drum loop. Then he would say, man, check this go. This would go great over that. Listen to this Spanish record I got. And I'm like, oh, my God, this is, and, you know, whatever. He said, Don, I know you got some drums for this. I know you do, man. And, you know, vice versa. I would say, yo, look at this record I found. He said, these drums. And it was really nice. I could do something and just send it to him or bring it to him. This is before the internet. I could do something and just give him the disc and say, man, see what you can do with this, man. And then would come back this great record, you know, and say, man, we're going to use this from Curious George. We're going to, you know, whatever.
What's the story behind the remix for House of Pain's On Point?
Oh, yeah, the House of Pain record. Okay, that was another really nice trip, nice gig. We got to work in a really nice studio that for some reason was very way out in Long Island somewhere. But it was a nice drive. It was a nice gig. And we got the music. Vic got the, he said, hey, Don, man, yo, what do you have for this? And they're going to do a remix to so-and-so, and, you know, what do you think? And I, you know, we're listening. And I said, okay, let's hook up and see what we can do. And we hooked up, and we're going through stuff. And we came up with something, and we went to the studio to lay it down. At that point, I was rhyming as a joke on all of the things I was remixing. You know, Vic would say, you got a rhyme for this? Or, yo, and I said, yo, let me drop something on that. So almost every remix we did, you know, I would, like, do a rhyme on it. I guess we were trying to kill two birds with one stone, but wasn't very successful most of the time.
So that was you being tongue-in-cheek.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's cool enough doing a lot of these great beats and remixes for people. Then, you know, how you know, that wasn't too cool. Hey, and we also kicked in a verse at just only this much more. Nah, you know, I never really thought of myself as an MC or a rapper like, yes, I need to be on it. I still don't. I never thought of myself like that. And so it was weird. So that record, nice studio, good gig, great album and artist, and that was a lot of fun. And I think I did let's see. There was a Michel Legrand record that I really wanted to use on the One Love, and I don't know if Vic was with it in the beginning, but I think he liked it, just the way I wanted to hook it up. And he had some great drums and stuff, and I said, okay, let's go with that. And we did it in his basement. We came up with it. I used to love working at Vic's, his mom's house, when he was living with his mom in the basement, and a lot of great memories. No ID used to stop by.
Wow.
Clue used to stop by. Steve Stout used to stop by. It was wonderful. It was wonderful, man. I used to end up staying there because his mother cooked so great. His great rice and beans, and his father made this wonderful roast chicken, and it just felt so wonderful and homely there. And I don't know. It was just at the time, man. I'd get out of my neighborhood, come over to Queens. It was nice and quiet over there, and he had the nice, had good record collection like mine, and the things I like, and we both had the same equipment basically. He was a little bit more advanced with as far as the equipment and stuff, but as far as creatively, we were both on the same page. So I could start something, he could finish it. He could start something and feel confident. Don, work with this, man. Let me go run out and do a few errands for my mom, and he'd come back and he'd hear it and be like, oh shit, okay, great. And so the One Love was basically something. I came up with that loop. He put the drums to it, and he put the finishing touches on it, and we ran it up to Faith at Columbia. She was like, okay.
Faith Newman?
Work. Yeah, Faith Newman. And she said, yeah, cool, works. And that's how that went down. That was cool, man. Now, the rumor is that anybody that works on a platinum record is supposed to get a plaque. Am I wrong with that, or is that the way it goes?
I thought that's how it went. That was my understanding, yeah.
Right. That's what I thought. Okay, now I'm just saying. I'm not saying anything past that. I just wanted to know. I was curious.
This is a joint that ends up becoming an inclusion on the 25th anniversary, I believe, of Illmatic, if I'm right in saying that.
Thank you. Okay. Now, if I'm involved in a record that huge or something that iconic, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if I don't know, I
You've
just
earned
thought,
it.
Yeah.
Word is born, you got 6 minutes on that jack, kid, that shit is real.
Hey, yo, check this shit out, man. Hey, yo, go, give me a cigarette, man. Yo, here you go. Yo, check it out, man. Check out what I got here, man. What is that? What's that? Yo, it's a letter I got from my man Nas, man. Word is born. What it say, kid?
What up, kid? I know shit is rough doing your bid. When the cops came, you should have slid to my crib. Fuck it, black, no time for looking back, it's done. Plus, congratulations, you know you got a son. I heard he looks like you. Why don't your lady write you? Told her she should visit, that's when she got hyper. Flipping, talking about he acts too rough. He didn't listen, he be ripping while I'm telling him stuff. I was like, yeah, shorty don't care. She a snake too. Fucking with them niggas from that fake crew that hate you. But yo, guess who got shot in the dome piece? Jerome's niece on her way home from Jones Beach is bugged. Plus Little Rob is selling drugs on the dime, hanging out with young thugs that all carry nines. And nighttime is more tripe than ever. What up with Cormega? Did you see him? Are y'all together? If so, then hold a foot down. Represent to the fullest. Say what's up to Herb, Ice and Bullet. I left for $100 in your commissary. You was my nigga when push came to shove.
But it was a great, it was a big record, big time, a lot of, we got a lot of other nice things from there. I think Vic did pun and stuff on that side. I was starting to do the Four Horse. We started doing a lot of cool stuff, at that point. And we still did a lot of nice things together and tried to develop things like the Bass Blaster project and a lot of other artists that went on to do stuff, but probably our demo never got recognized. I don't want to name the artists, but we were doing a lot of lab work, you could say.
You mentioned demos. There's a period after Diabo Bleak, and you're working with a lot of artists for demos and helping with the development. One of those artists was Scaramanga, wasn't it?
Yes, Sir Menelik Scaramanga. Or Scaramanga, I guess we might as well say now. Keith had brought him by. Now, the way Scaramanga would tell it is that he was a fan of mine since Raise It Up. I'm not saying nothing that he wouldn't say or didn't say to me. So Keith says, man, I like to come by with my homeboy, man. And, at that time, Sir Menelik, man, and, some say, yeah. He's like, yo, man, big fan. So he's in my living room, and he would just hang out while me and Keith are doing some of these promos, what ended up being the Cenobites. So he said, man, yo, one of these days, man, I like to get on one of you. I said, well, And after Keith started doing other things, and I think he moved to L.A. and then went to Europe and doing a lot of stuff. Menelik was still around, and he would say, hey, man, is it possible? Blah, blah, blah. I want to work on some stuff. So, yeah, I did a promo with him, and then, I started, just checking him, seeing what he's about and what he's doing, and we start vibing. The same process like Keith. And, I wouldn't say I was mentoring him or anything like that, but because he was already a great artist. Yeah. I don't consider myself a rapper, like a MC. Those guys are MCs. They all really do it. I'm an MC. I don't even feel right saying I'm an MC. I just don't. So,
which is crazy to me.
It's it's crazy to you. No, I don't know. Why? Because look, if I have to do like now I'm writing material for I guess what would be third solo album. I don't know who's gonna put it out or who's or whatever, but I'm just writing a lot. Writing like a demon again, as they say. And I don't think of it as okay. Now, as Godfather Don, let me see. What would I just don't do it. I don't do it. I don't think like that. Whether that what comes out, I don't know. But yeah. I just don't think of it like that. Menelik was an MC. He's an MC. Keith is an MC. I don't think of myself in the same way, like an MC. I can't. I give you that I could say I a beat maker or I make hip hop music. I don't know. Just describing myself, I don't know if I just don't feel comfortable doing it.
I understand.
It doesn't make much sense to me because it's all transitory to me. It could change at a moment's notice.
Do you think you would look back at your older body of work through a different kind of lens today? Had the marketing been different back then?
Oh, right. Well, one thing that I noticed back then, the marketing was more straightforward. Let's say the marketing. Back then, it wasn't very much. It didn't appear as though the record labels were acting like they were making records for a genre audience. To me, it didn't feel like that. Like it felt like they were making records that you would put on the same shelf as Whitney Houston, right, or Michael Jackson. You know, it's just, you go to the record store. This is hip hop. This is R&B. This is pop. This is rock. So I didn't really see a big difference in how they were marketing it. You know, as far as with the push they would give back then, and you know, they would take you to these parties, and you know, you would see R&B people there, and all kind of other people, and I thought that was great, and it was fascinating. You know, now it's like I don't really know about records until I look in that rabbit hole, that genre. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then I would see this artist and that artist. Like, wow, there's so many in there. But when you look just on the general view or the cursory glance or level, you know, you wouldn't necessarily see them. But then you find out they're platinum, they're gold, but I don't hear them I don't see them or hear them on TV or on the radio like that, and they're platinum. So it's just different with the marketing and the reach, right? Like the directness to the customer, I think, has a lot to do with the marketing, that it becomes more niche almost, you know? Like we can target you specifically with this product, you know, or for this product. And that's the way it feels now. Back then, it was like, for everyone who likes music and likes hip-hop, submit it for your approval.
What's going on? If you are still listening to this episode and enjoying the podcast, why not become a patron of Fly Fidelity at patreon.com/flyfidelity. Becoming a patron means you are directly supporting our show and helping us to create a new episode each and every week. It also means that as a thank you for being a super supporter, you'll be able to access exclusive content to you, including patron updates, offers and discounts, a monthly secret podcast, early access, and so much more.
It would be an automatic line of separation that was necessarily there. And don't cross them. Now, I know all hip-hop artists like each other. I mean, not in that sense, but all hip-hop artists, all rappers recognize everyone else as rapping. You know, like we're all construction workers or we all in the Army. So that recognition, I could assume is there. But when it comes to like the marketing of it, I think that's where it separates. Where, you know, we're in this class or we're on this side of the block, and you guys, you know, you're underground or you're this or you're pop, and you know. So the marketing to me often reflects that, unfortunately.
Completely agree. What kind of space has playing in a jazz band given you to think about your relationship with hip hop today?
Well, it allows me not to take the hip-hop writing too serious, meaning that everything that I would want to say in a particular 16 bars, I realize that not everything is going to be able to be put in the 16 bars. So the density is not always necessary. The extreme technical backflips and histrionics, all that is not always necessary. So like a great jazz solo, for how many ever measures it goes, beginning, middle, end, you know, the classic formula, nice content, things that can be recognized, enjoyed, and, you know, you recognize the art form and you work within it from a love of it and to add to it, you know. You want it to be an enriching experience, you know.
It's an extension, isn't it?
Sure, you know. The idea of improvisation, I guess I've always had that, you know, which I guess what made me really get into the playing live music. I said, oh wow, you can see. I always relate rhyming with playing a solo instrument like a guitar or a saxophone, like the vocal line. I said, wow, you can make a line over the bar and still have it connect to the 3 bars before that, and you know, just a stream of consciousness sort of thing. You know, I really dig having that and really understanding the importance of that now in the rap lyric, just as opposed to a bunch of cool phrases or great pattern sections or this, that, you know. Just that I can have a real concise statement that allows the listener to grab on, hold on, and enjoy the 16 bars, and hopefully it takes you someplace and you come out on the other end where I left you in one piece with something you can walk away with.
Speaking of being taken someplace, we've been talking about some of your most remarkable changes within your work over your career. How have the last 2 years or so changed either your practices or routines?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I tell you, if we're talking the last 2 years, then we can't mention that without mentioning the pandemic. And what that has done for me was, well, one, it started me writing a hell of a lot more as far as lyrics, and you know, doing a lot more beats, and you know, a lot more people saying, hey, you're not playing a lot of jazz stuff now, so how do you feel about doing a verse here, a verse there, or making a beat for me here? So I had the time to do it because there was no live performances happening. So I got to study myself, if you can say that, a little bit, and find out why I did some things this way and why I didn't do some things this way. This is all creatively, of course, and just how going forward I would be able to get the most out of this when I do it next time or this. So I developed a fresh approach to music, period, or at least fresh for me, or an approach that I didn't really conceive of fully prior to the 2 years that we're talking about related to approach, patience, simplicity, and weightiness of content, as far as musical content, you know, emotional content, dynamic content, right? You could say a lot in a, you know, you could really say something very heavy with a whisper, and you can yell something out and not saying anything, basically, you know, or like saying BS, bunch of BS, but you're yelling at the top of your young lungs. You got the face and the mouth, and you're not saying anything really. You know what I mean? And on the other hand, you could whisper something or say something with the most calm speaking voice, and you could say the heaviest words that you would ever want to hear, you know? So those things really, I incorporated a lot of that into my practice, you know, as far as approaching the music and the creative, you know, aspects of my music.
I'd also say that in your practice, it's also fueled by this urge to constantly change your process, to bring into this focus of the most immediate and present version of your creative self, isn't it?
Right. Oh, yeah, definitely. The is of things, for me, what is where everything can ever be. If not to get too philosophical or esoteric or however you want to say. And whatever's in the past, to me, is dead. And whatever's in the future, who the hell knows? It's a guess, you know, in the basic level. So here and now is where I can do anything and everything that I can do at this moment. So I really rarely ever want to repeat what I did already or have any flights of fancy about something that may not be or may not be realistic or anything. So whatever is at hand, that's what I tend to want to deal with. You know, so as far as creating things or being creative, to me, that's where everything is, right here.
Absolutely.
Everything that can actually be is right here, right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. You come from the Sun Ra school of thought, don't you?
Oh, yeah, I tell you. When I was recruited by Ahmed Abdullah, trumpet player for Sun Ra, to be in his band, which I've been in for the last maybe 5 to 7 years, he says, man, look, the way you're doing music, Don, is the way we want to end up being with it. He said, you say you can't read or write music, but you're memorizing all these Sun Ra songs, and we're still, you know, a lot of us do the sheet music because, man, we don't have time to try to memorize all this stuff. He said, we eventually want to get to that, because I'm saying, man, all you guys read charts and read music, it must be a wonderful thing, man. Well, he said, well, you can always learn that, man, but to memorize these things like you're doing, that's where we all want to end up, man. That's where all of us want, you know, so, and the philosophy is great, and just the openness to understanding, you know, the never-ending understanding of what is, you know, and what could be, you know, in many respects. You know, that really made the creative aspects to my music, any kind of music, it just opened things up for me.
Godfather Don, I want to thank you for what has been an incredible journey into your career. What's next? You mentioned the album earlier. What's next as far as jazz music coming out from yourself?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, man, I appreciate it, Luke. And I guess what's next is I have a, well, I mean, it may or may not be of interest to your listeners, but I hear that the Hazardous is going to be re-released next week. I think nice. HHV may be behind that one. And as far as jazz, I have the Osmosis. I mean the Gnosis. The Osmosis, I think I told you about that. I always get that mixed up because I was naming them at the same time. But the Osmosis is the one with Parental, and the Gnosis is the one with William Parker and Ronnie Barach, the jazz record. So I have that. I have a duo record that I'm working on with a great drummer from New York, from California, named Vijay Anderson. And that one is going to be called Free Exchange. And that should, I mean, the finishing touches is being put together on it. You know, and we're out here, we're looking for possible distributors and things to do some new Godfather Don stuff, jazz stuff, as well as hip-hop stuff. We're exploring that. You know, I'm getting down with a few other things. We got a soap company that I'm associating myself with. I guess I can say that.
Interesting.
It's called Effervescent Natural Soaps. You know, you can Instagram that, Effervescent Natural Soaps. And also, you know, I'm just open to any new projects that involve things really being creative and pushing where it pushing the boundaries, you know. But the jazz thing is definitely coming along. Lots of projects in the works, and lots of writing, hip hop, jazz, lots of stuff. So anybody is interested in that, they could always, Instagram if they have interest in any of these things, and check me out.
There it is. You heard it on Fly Fidelity. Rodney Godfather Don Chapman, thank you so much for joining us to do this.
Hey, no problem, man. No problem. It was fun. It's fun.
Yeah. So, we gotta close out the whole session. A little something, harking back to the good old days. Yeah. No, I can't go out like that. Okay. 7 degrees of elevation.
You're tuned into the soothing sounds of Fly Fidelity Podcast in partnership with Rapper's Delight, the brand new hip-hop parody card collection set, original art with featuring artists from Garbage Pail Kids and many, many more. You can own such classics as Cheesy E and Swim Shady. Protect your deck, baby. Any supporters of Fly Fidelity on Patreon get 30% off vouchers at rappersdelight.org. That's WARPPERSDELIGHT.org. You can support Fly Fidelity Podcast, unlock exclusive content on the Patreon, including a monthly secret podcast and more.
I wish I could show my appreciation for this
podcast.
I wish I could respond to it somehow or be notified in the future when
Fly Fidelity
updates, because it's so great. But I don't think there's a way I can do any of those things.
Uh-oh, you're wrong.
Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and SoundCloud and never miss an episode. Find us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook.
My peoples, are you with me where you at?